Greetings, my name is Anthony Johnson and I'm a malware efficacy integration engineer based out of Atlanta, Georgia on the integration team. And what this demo here is, we're going to talk about Trusteer Pinpoint. And in this scenario, we're going to talk about the unusual activity from a new device using a new browser language. Now, the scenario is going to use the browser's preferred languages for web pages as an example for a detection of uncharacteristic device attributes for the user. Now, we're going to profile the victim's legit device, and as the fraudster used those credentials to log in from a new device where the browser's preferred languages for the web page is in Russian or Chinese. And then from there, we're going to try to send money to a mule account, create a mule account, and then we're going to show how Trusteer Pinpoint helps prevent the fraud. And we'll show that the legit user, in this case the victim, is still able to conduct business even though all this stuff was going on. So as we're on this browser here, as you can see, and we are on the victim browser, we're going to log in, and as normal users would do. All right. And I need to make sure I get my stuff right. Okay. And we're in. Now from here, we're going to add a new payee and send money. But first, we want to look at the Backend Console. Now, in the Backend Console, what this is it shows in real time the API results that are displayed in a readable format along with the raw API data. Now, there's three areas that we want to focus on here: fraud detection status, the live financial malware infection detection status, and the actionable bank policy. Now, for the fraud detection status, it's the status that shows if there was a threat found. So in this case, it says allowed login, which means no security threat was found with an associated client session, and it's going to allow all account activities without restrictions. Now, the live financial malware infection detection status says it's not infected. That means that the client browser was detected as not infected. Okay, so that means that we're allowed all online transactions as the actionable bank policy. So let's go into the bank, as you can see here, and let's go into manage payees, and let's create a new payee. As you can see here, we can do that. Let's create test user 100, and let's give him a count of 1001. We can add, and if we look down, we can see our test user 100. And if we go to send money, we see our test user 100 here. And we want to send him some money of $1,000. The select date will be now, and we want to send. The transaction went through successfully. There's a transaction ID. We can look back on the Backend Console, and we can see as each page that the user goes through, the fraud detection status is allowed login, it's not infected, and they are allowed all online transactions. Now, also, when we want to send money, we want to do an incidental transfer. Incidentally, we want to send money to somebody. So we go here. We want to enter the name. We're going to go test user 101. We're going to send them $1,000. And we're going to give them an IBAN number of 1002. Select date is now, and we're going to send. As you can see here, the transaction went successfully. And if we go back to my account, we can see test user 100 and 101 each went through successfully. And looking at the Backend Console, allowed login, not infected, allow all online transactions. Now, let's go on the fraudster's browser. And if you can see here, I had this predisposed where the language is set up for Chinese Taiwan. So we're going to click OK there, and we'll click a new window. And now we're going to go to the Bank eMoon website. And let's make sure we log out of here and go back here. So now on the fraudster's website, we're going to log in with the same credentials that we used for the victim. And we're going to assume that the fraudster was able to get the victim's credentials, username, and password. And he's logging in from a browser. Again, that is not typical for the user. So test user, the name browser, with the same credentials that we used before. And we need to make sure that I do it right. And now we're in. So now if we go back and look at the backend console, we see that the fraud detection status has changed. It is now allow login and restrict. Now this means that the client session poses a high risk for an account takeover attempt. Now it's going to allow you to log in, but it will restrict activities such as adding new payees and incidental transfer. And the reason for it says unusual activity from a new device using a new browser language. It checks the browser. The browser was not infected. So it says the client browser was detected as a not infected with live malware. So the actionable bank policy, what's it going to do? It's going to disable adding new payees, disable incidental transfers, and it's going to monitor the account. So such is there when it monitors the account, you can configure that to send an email to the administrator users to alert them and as such. So looking back in to the account from the fraudster perspective, and as we did with the victim, we went to manage payees and we wanted to add one. But as you can see here, a system message has been set up and it applies the business logic based upon Trusteer Pinpoint's policy, which in turn it's disabling adding new payees. And so therefore when the fraudster tries to add new payees, say if he was going to send it to himself, he's unable to do that. And also one of the actionable bank policies again is disabling the incident transfer. So let's go over there and see if what happens. So we go to send money. Now as you can see here, you can still send money to the existing payees, test user 100, but if they were going to go to the incidental transfer, they again get a system message saying based upon the business logic on Pinpoint's recommendations, disabling incidental transfers, therefore stopping the fraud. Now let's kind of recap this and go over this a little bit. The fraudster logged in with the victim's stolen credentials using a device that was not typical to the user. And what was not typical was the preferred language. In this case, it was set to Chinese. Trusteer Pinpoint detected and alerted, as you can see here on the back end, through the fraud detection status and the policy that was set up. It took immediate action on the bank actionable bank policy again, disabling adding new payees, disabling incidental transfers, and monitoring the account. And then from there, the fraud was prevented. So now, seamlessly, if the victim wanted to go back into the site and log in, this was all going on behind the scenes and unaware to him. So the user is always protected. So we're going to use the same credentials as we used before, being that we're the primary user of the account. And make sure I get this right again. And as you can see, the user is able to log into the account and thus can manage payees, we go into send money, and is able to do incidental transfers. And if we look on the backend console, we can see that they were allowed login. No security threat was found with this session specifically. The client browser was detected as not infected, and it was allowing all online transactions. Now, this is a perfect example and scenario of how Trusteer Pinpoint works when the unusual activity from a new device using a new browser language works seamlessly behind the scenes. My name is Anthony Johnson, and I hope you enjoyed the demo. Thank you.